War is grisly. That means accurate reporting about war sometimes includes grisly photographs. Intrepid cameraman Eric Dershmead, on assignment in Iraq for CBS News, visited the war front today and filed this exclusive report.
It seems that for the last 7 days, that gigantic attack coming from Iran into Iraq was led by children and by mullahs. There was no regular forces, there were no regular army units confronting the Iraqis, and the Iraqis were sitting with their highly trained army with the modern weapons in fixed positions, and they just mowed them down as they came wave after wave. And very few survived it. And the ones that survived it are very frightened little children. I mean, we found some today that were 9 years old, and they were just huddled in a corner, terrified.
They came within a half a mile, but then the Iraqi artillery and the Air Force took its toll. It shows that the Ayatollahs in Tehran have not run out of human martyrs as yet. Eric Dershmead for CBS News at the Haweza marshes in Iraq.
The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan was one of the major news stories of 1979, but the Soviets quickly sealed Afghanistan's borders and virtually killed the story. On television, Kabul became the forbidden city. Now, a journalist under contract to CBS News has come out with exclusive pictures that show in detail the impact of the occupation. Afghanistan under the Soviet gun. A Russian helicopter flies above Kabul, ancient crossroads for caravans and the capital of occupied Afghanistan. These photographs represent the most extensive scrutiny of Kabul by any Westerner since the Russian occupation began in December 1979. The pictures were taken by Eric Dershmead, an independent journalist on assignment for CBS News. Eric, why did they let you in, and why now?
Well, I think they finally decided that they needed some independent reporter and not always the propaganda that comes out of Soviet television. And they just picked me.
What was the one thing that surprised you the most?
Well, I think, first of all, that Kabul itself, you don't really feel the war if it isn't for the helicopters all the time. It is a drab, it's a cold place, it's very medieval. The regime has basically very little support outside the big cities. The country is in revolt, although not organized, but certainly in revolt.
Dershmead beat the system by concealing copies of censored videotapes, pictures that show clearly the extent of the Russian military occupation and their political control of Kabul. A Soviet armored column moves through the streets of Kabul. Look closely at this tank. A device to explode landmines protrudes from the front. Mines planted by the Afghan resistance have injured and killed hundreds of Russian soldiers. The guns are arranged to provide firepower in all directions if the column is attacked.
And from there, I went to Beirut.
We're under heavy Israeli bombardment. Planes are coming in. The bombs hit about 150 feet from us, right in front. It is on the beach somewhere. We don't know exactly where we were there, but we were chased away, fortunately, by Palestinians, because as soon as we were chased away, the bombs hit. I can only say 2 Mirages, and there's a lot of anti-aircraft fire. It has died down now. It seems like they have gone away. And here they go again, here they go again. Here come the bombs. Let us get into cover. Come on.
This is a CBS News special report. Vietnam today. The problems of peace, with correspondent Dan Rather.
Since the fall of Vietnam in April 1975, some foreign camera crews have been allowed in, most of them from socialist countries, a few from the West. Fewer still have gotten as close a look as Eric Dershmead, a Canadian independent producer who recently returned from a 5-week stay in Vietnam. Dershmead got a first-hand look at how the Hanoi government is dealing with members of the defeated upper echelons of the old Saigon government.
That's about 1 hour outside of Hanoi. It is a camp that houses 460 prisoners, Most of them very, very high officials indeed, ministers, generals. The lowest echelon that I found was a colonel. I think the hopelessness of the camp is pretty well seen in the face of this old gentleman. I feel, I mean, it's very visible when you're in the country. There is a great strain between the Vietnamese and their socialist brothers from the Soviet Union. The Vietnamese want to remain Vietnamese. They've always been very, very Vietnamese. The Soviets want to have a very strong influence inside the country. The Vietnamese don't give it to them. They don't do what the Soviets really want them to do. They have always refused, and they are still not a satellite state in such a way. They are allied to the Soviets, but they do not belong to the Soviets. They don't do what the Soviets ask them to do.
In brief, after spending well over a month in Vietnam, what was the most important thing you came away from this experience with?
They are desperately looking for ties with countries, with industrial powers, including the United States, including Canada, including Western Europe, that can help them out of an economic crisis to an extent where they don't know anymore where to turn to. Now, that's the one thing. Internally, there is a split in the party, and I feel it should not be overlooked that there is a possibility that military leaders may take control of the country.
A military coup?
I would not call it a military coup. I would say that the old politicians may be replaced by more modern technocrats, military-inspired leaders. And I would almost think that the new Prime Minister of Vietnam will be the very well-known General Giap.
Thank you, Eric Dershmead.